Understanding the mysterious East, interpreting the timeless classics. Welcome to Mysterious East. Today, let us uncover the hidden truth behind Jin Ping Mei. Chapter 2. The Economics of Desire. Friends, last time we talked about Pan Jinlian's tragic past and how she was slowly pushed toward darkness by the cruelty of society. But her real nightmare only began after she entered the Jimen household. Now let us continue. Try seeing the world from Pan Jinlian's perspective. You are young, beautiful, intelligent. You can play the pipa. You can sing. You can read and write. You dream of a better life. And yet fate throws you away like garbage and traps you beside a weak and pitiful man like Wu Delang. Every morning you wake up and see his miserable face. Outside the window is the rough and vulgar world of poor laborers struggling to survive. How would that feel? Despair, complete despair. Psychology has a term called relative deprivation. Pan Jinlian's suffering did not come only from poverty. It came from the unbearable feeling that she deserved more than the life she had been forced into. And so, when that wooden pole accidentally slipped from her hands and struck Hemen Ching on the head, many readers saw only the beginning of an affair. But I see something else entirely. I see a drowning person suddenly discovering a lifeline. In water margin, this moment is written as a moral judgment. But in Jin Ping Mei, the author treats it with remarkable subtlety. When Hemen Ching saw Pan Jinlian, he was struck by her beauty. But when Pan Jinlian saw Hemen Ching, what moved her was not merely physical attraction. The book says she thought to herself, "What a powerful man." This was not only attraction toward a man. It was attraction toward power, status, and resources. The expensive clothes Hemen Ching wore, his confident smile, the overwhelming aura of control surrounding him. All of it represented the upper-class world Pan Jinlian desperately longed to enter. Pan Jinlian's cruelty grew like a poisonous thorn inside an environment defined by scarcity and desperation. She had no family to protect her, no money, no way out. The only things she could rely on were her beauty and her intelligence. And in order to seize that lifeline, she had to become ruthless. Because if she failed, she would return to that tiny broken house beside the pancake stall and rot there for the rest of her life. That is why Pan Jinlian's tragedy is not simply the tragedy of lust. It is the tragedy of rigid social classes. The tragedy of someone trapped at the bottom of society, choosing the darkest shortcut available. At this point, you may think, once Hemen Ching brought Pan Jinlian into his household, did they finally begin living a happy life together? The answer is the complete opposite. After entering the Jimen household, Pan Jinlian's real nightmare finally began, because she quickly discovered that she was far from the only woman there. There was the official wife, Wu Yuanyang, the wealthy Li Jiaoyi, and later, the even wealthier Meng Yulu. The Hemen household was a miniature battlefield. There was no smoke or gunfire, but every meal, every piece of clothing, every seating arrangement at the table was filled with hidden warfare. And Pan Jinlian, the poorest concubine with the lowest social background, had only one question to answer. How could she survive? That brings us to today's central theme, the economics of relationships. One reason Jin Ping Mei feels so cold and realistic is because it tears away the warm mask covering human relationships and exposes the Li Yi exchange underneath. Even Hemen Ching's marriages followed this logic. He married Wu Yuanyang because she came from a respected military family. That was political alliance. He married Li Jiaoyi because she was a famous courtesan with private wealth and deep knowledge of entertainment and pleasure. That was resource integration. Later, he married Meng Yulu because she arrived carrying enormous dowry assets. That was practically a corporate acquisition. If you look carefully, Xi Menqing's marriages resembled modern business mergers. Among all these women, Pan Jinlian was the poorest. When she entered the household, she possessed almost nothing. Inside a wealthy mansion like the Ximen household, status was directly connected to assets. Wu Yuanyang controlled the finances. Meng Yulu had money and influence. But Pan Jinlian had nothing except Xi Menqing's affection. And that created a terrifying reality. She had to constantly compete for attention because affection was her only survival resource. Imagine entering a company where every other partner invested capital, while you were accepted only because the boss liked you. What would you do? You would work desperately. You would compete viciously. You might even sabotage your coworkers just to maintain the boss's attention. That was Pan Jinlian's reality. All her jealousy, her manipulation, her cruelty came from survival anxiety. Once Xi Menqing stopped loving her, she would instantly become worthless inside that household. There is one heartbreaking detail in the novel. Once, Pan Jinlian carefully crafted an exquisite pair of red shoes embroidered with gold thread. She wore them proudly before Xi Menqing, hoping to attract his attention. Those shoes represented all her effort, all her desperation to remain loved. Meanwhile, another concubine, Li Pinger, casually rewarded servants with more silver during her birthday celebration than Pan Jinlian earned in an entire year. Pan Jinlian watched Li Pinger's effortless elegance and generosity, and jealousy twisted inside her like a venomous snake. That jealousy was not because Li Pinger was more beautiful. It was because Li Pinger possessed wealth, and therefore the freedom to live calmly and gracefully. Pan Jinlian, on the other hand, had to live like a fighting rooster with its feathers permanently raised, always prepared for battle just to protect her place. This is where the author becomes truly merciless. He tells us that all so-called palace struggles and household rivalries ultimately revolve around one thing: the competition for scarce survival resources. Once love becomes currency, people slowly transform into monsters. And honestly, doesn't this ancient story still feel strangely familiar today? When people sabotage coworkers to secure promotions, when families sacrifice their health and happiness just to buy larger houses and better cars. Are we really so different from Xi Menqing and Pan Jinlian? The first great value of Jin Ping Mei is that it forces us to confront the black hole hidden inside ourselves. Human tragedy is not always born from evil. Sometimes it is born from weakness, from fear, from scarcity. People hurt others because they themselves are terrified of losing. True compassion is not standing on a moral high ground and judging others. It is kneeling down and understanding the desperation of someone struggling in the mud. But this was only the beginning. As Xi Menqing's business empire expanded and Pan Jinlian's methods grew darker, something unexpected appeared inside that household, full of schemes and calculation, a relationship that resembled genuine love. And the woman at the center of it was Li Pinger. If the Ximen household were compared to a modern corporation, Pan Jinlian would be the employee with no background, no money, and no support, desperately working overtime and pleasing the boss just to survive. Li Pinger, however, entered the household like a mysterious investor arriving with enormous capital. And her arrival completely shattered the fragile balance inside the Ximen household, setting the stage for the most heartbreaking conflict in the entire novel. Friends, that is all for today. In the next chapter, we will witness the darkest tragedy inside the Shimen household.